You're listening to Agile Ideas, the podcast, hosted by Fatima Abuchi. For anyone listening out there not having a good day, please know there is help out there. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Agile Ideas. I'm Fatima, CEO at Agile Management Office, mental health ambassador, and your host. On today's podcast, we have Mark Burnett. Mark Burnett, also referred to as Reasoning with Mark, which we'll get into in just a moment. A son of the Caribbean, he is overly obsessed with his mission to empower clients via an introspective climate that allows their teams to become the most powerful versions of themselves. Hailing from Jamaica, he believes that projects should be given the proper respect through training, prioritization, and standardization, all contributing to successful delivery. He's the founder, trainer, and consultant at Econo Project X, a firm that helps professionals improve their project success and takes businesses of all industries and sizes from a point of chaos, avoiding the painful exercise of delivering their project goals with confidence. So please join me in welcoming Mark to the show. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Fatima, for having me. I've been looking forward to being on your platform for some time now.
I know it's been a while that we've been going back and forth, but we're finally here. So let's make the most of the time we have together. I'm going to get straight into starting off with probably the most common question you get. I mentioned in your bio to everyone listening that alongside your name, you have this trademark statement, Reasoning with Mark. What is that? Tell us a little bit more about where that came from and what it means.
Okay, so Reason with Mark is, I would say it's like a nickname, a moniker, if you will, that I got, from doing projects across the Caribbean region. So a lot of persons don't know that my style, Fatima, is conversation. So I'm very big on conversation, and so I just have this personality, that connects with people, just stimulate someone on a day. Maybe they're feeling down, and I didn't even know that they are feeling down, but through conversation, I am able to get them in a different mood, just empower them in any kind of way that I can unconsciously, you know. So I really got the name from my peers and my co-workers and like a lot of persons who know me across the region. So they just say, "You're the reasoner." And then after that, just the community of people were just saying, "Okay, we think you should have some kind of platform that says Reason with Mark." And so what it really is that I'm known as the reasoner, but the platform that I have is called Reason with Mark. So like the newsletter, whatever talks I do, like podcasts to come, the platform is Reason with Mark, but it's really the reasoner. They call me, but they just say, "Hey, we think that whatever platform that you create, whatever you're doing, whatever impact or mark that you're making, it's called Reason with Mark." And so that's how I got that moniker.
Well, it's a good skill to have as a project management professional, because being able to reason with, stakeholders and sponsors and all of these different characters in projects, I think goes a long way. So the fact that you've picked up on that early is really positive. And what's even better about it is that it's not something that you identified for yourself, but it's your customers, your stakeholders that identified it for you. So that's amazing. So well done on that. So tell me, I've shared that you're, from Jamaica. Tell me about you, where you started, how did you get into project management? Give us a little bit more detail about you and who you are.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Kingston, Jamaica. The journey, primary school, and then from primary school you pass this regional exam, and then I moved on to we call it high school, secondary school, and then from there I went to the University of the West Indies. So the University of the West Indies is a premier university here in the West Indies, the Commonwealth, and it's also in the top 1.5% globally as well. So yeah, went to the university. So, just growing up, Fatima, most of us wanted to become like engineers, doctors, lawyers, and so for me, I wanted to become an engineer, so yeah, so my journey was charted like that. I did the physics and just the technical subjects. I went to the university and I did electronics engineering and physics. So that's how I started. So when I left university, I started out in the telecommunication, the mobile space, because there was a big boom in the Caribbean. Because, we're like a smaller states nation, so
Mm-hmm.
there was a big boom here where we were moving into the digital, I would say digital transformation, moving to the 3G, the 4G LTE, you know, because before that we weren't able to use our phone like YouTube and the old streaming of data and all those things. So it was the boom in the telecommunication space. So I started out with a major telecommunication vendor here. So I started out as a project engineer, and so when I started, I just I grew through the ranks, because of one, the reason with Mark, that skill, just the conversation. So then I started to travel from Jamaica to other territories. And then that's when I realized that, hey, reasoning with Mark, you're actually a project manager, because I've been just, my job description was a project engineer, but I was doing leadership. I had leadership responsibilities all over the place, and the contract obligations weren't changing, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so, yeah, I say, oh, wow, you have now become an accidental project manager, but you know, still being in this project engineering role and stuff, So anyhow, I spent some time there, and then fast forward a couple of years after that, I was working for this other major player in the telecommunication space, and I was in a serious accident.
Mm.
And I was told all the medical facilities here in Jamaica, they told me there was nothing they could have possibly done to save my arm. And it was in that moment I realized the power of resilience. And this is one of the top skill that all project managers or project management professionals, even the PMO, this
Mm-hmm.
is a skill that you should have, because you could be the most qualified or competent person. If you're not resilient, I mean, this area is not for you.
Yeah.
You have
100%.
to keep knocking. Yeah. You have to have that mindset. So yeah, I defied what they were saying, and then they said, okay, let's transfer you to this final destination, that's in Kingston, and let's see what they can do for you. And then when they transferred me there, I could vividly remember, like, because I was there for 24 hours and there were impurities in the arm, like the dirt, the stone, the small stone, and it wasn't cleaned, And so I was like 2 minutes away from the arm being confirmed to be amputated, because the wound wasn't clean. And so when I went to the facility, they told me, wow, let's see what we can do. And they started to wash the wound, and then they had to pin it. And I think they required maybe like 3 pins to pin the arm in place, because it was just skin holding the arm.
Wow.
Sorry if I'm too graphic,
No, no. Yes.
Yeah. And I think only one pin was there at the facility. And this is now the birth of the ambidextrous thinking, because I don't know how the doctors were able to use experimentation and creativity with that one pin to pin that arm in place.
Mm.
And here we are today. I've written a guide, the Ambidextrous Project Manager,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been sharing my story And my projects have been successful, I would say, because of my story. I put my story into the people for inspiration and into the project for the outcome, you know. And yeah, that has been, I would say, my journey. And then while I was there like for 6 months. I learned, again, I developed this concept of ambidextrous project manager where I look at life. It's agile. You could say it's agile, it's adaptive, but it's just whatever you're doing or whatever situation that you're in or complexity, it's about an open mindset that will allow you to find the tools or the people or the emotional intelligence, the empathy required to get the job done.
Mm. Wow, that's a really story, almost like a sad story, but really positive in what came out of it. Obviously, you're well, and you got through that. And as you said, resilience is played a key part. You also talked about being adaptive, not only yourself in that time, not giving up, but also the doctors in getting creative, which again, project management's all about creativity, but then also looking for solutions probably outside the black and white where you can, they probably could have just given up in the first place that you were, versus then when you get to the second location, they could have just given up by saying it's only possible with 3. But if they had a fixed mindset, maybe they would have thought like that. So I was going to ask you about that. So I'm glad you brought it up because I think it's an important story and it does definitely show resilience. And it probably makes you now stronger for it because that sort of experience probably changes you. And thank you for sharing it. I'm sure people would appreciate that.
Yes, definitely. And even these days, when I'm like working with teams, and they would ask me about resilience. And so I'm just so humbled, and I'm so fortunate to have been in this situation. While I was in the situation, I wasn't thinking like this, I was, nervous, I was eager, I didn't know what the outcome would have been, but just looking back, I'm just so humbled and I'm so grateful because one of the things I could say to the community is that I became an accidental project manager, in the corporate space, when I started out, just being thrown into these small projects. And then on that other end, which is life, because everything in life is a project, most things, and you will realize that you will be thrown into some projects to solve some problems, whether it's a project or you're working in a PMO, and it has nothing to do with the tools and techniques for some time. Before you get there, it's about the customer, it's about the stakeholder, it's about the mindset,
Yes,
and we can call it whatever,
exactly.
agility, adaptability,
Yep.
whatever the framework is.
Yep.
And yeah, I have learned to like substantiate that and induce that into, I would say, the people and the changes in the time. We're looking at AI, the disruption, you know.
And so then thinking about you named a lot of different attributes and skill sets that are really good for project and PMO professionals. Thinking about an aspiring project manager, what would you say is the first thing they should learn? Methodologies aside, because most pet project management, students or students who want to be usually come and say, hey, Fatima, what course should I do? What methodology should I study? And it's like, that's like not even the first thing to consider. So what would you say is the first thing an aspiring project manager should learn, regardless of where they get that experience and skill?
I would say, Fatima, I mean, I want to give credit because there are a lot of influencers in the space, project management experts who are doing a wonderful job and, sharing their knowledge and so forth. And so, I mean, for me, I just want to add to that. So it's not a one size fit all. There's a big knowledge base there, but from my personal experience, as I said, life, accidental project manager life and in the corporate space. I would say the first thing is to develop the open mind, because if your mind is not open to something, then it's difficult to do anything, So you could be qualified with, say, for example, a PMP, but if your mind is not open to get into different domains or to learn from different people or to adapt to different culture, then you will have a lot of challenges. So the first thing I would say is an open mindset. And how you develop that open mindset, it's not easy. It's just to put yourself in situations that will make you uncomfortable.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
Put yourself in conversations that will make you uncomfortable. It's difficult. Someone might be listening and say, oh, what Mark is saying that it's so easy or it's so cliche, but it's the truth. Just put yourself into difficult spots and then you
Okay.
will see. Even if you reflect on your life, you will see that.
So I can think of one where I've personally done that, that I think might be relevant. But is there something that you can share what's your most uncomfortable situation that you can share with aspiring PMs?
Okay, I'm going back to the being in the hospital, right? So I was working for some time, a little for a short time. Then the accident happened. I was in the hospital. But, just going through the trials and tribulation and just observing how the people were doing things. Even the doctor that said we cannot do anything about it, and he's a top expert. So I'm not saying he doesn't know what he is doing. He knows what he's doing because he's a top expert. But I was just observing his behavior. That's also an attribute of a project manager. Sometimes there's no wrong or right. It's just the problem. Just listen and observe. So I was listening and I was observing and I was learning. And then one of the things that I realized is that at this time, I went on a spiritual journey as well. So every morning when the doctors came to visit, I was always in a positive spirit. And I realized that my spirit was resonating with the doctors. And so they were feeding off my energy, And because they were feeding off my energy, the impossible became possible. And they found creative ways how to save the arm, And I'm telling you again, and this was when I was learning the true soft skills of project management, I would say. So in the book, The Ambidextrous Project Management Manager, I spoke a little about embracing your dualities. Because yes, project management is about leading, but also I told you about giving off a positive energy because of that spiritual vibration that I was on. And so even in your project, sometimes as a leader, things might be happening, but when something is happening to everyone. But even in a space of maybe 15 minutes, just being positive as the leader, and they may see a smile on your face, or you come into the office, with some fruits and you hand someone a banana or an apple or something, it can change something in the project, And so when it changed something, it opened doors for great results. And so in that situation, that positive energy opened doors for a lot of positive results in that project. It's because of the open mindset.
It's a really good summary to give, because you're right, that positive energy and negative as well, people feed off it. So
Yes.
if you weren't so, in the situation that you described, to be positive, people would think you're crazy. But to be positive, it, like you said, that brushed off on those around you, where even though experts can be amazing at what they do because they're experts, they've got there for a reason, they can be wrong. And sometimes we're wrong as project management and PMO professionals as well. Like all the time we can be wrong. And sometimes it takes someone to just put something out there that makes you think, hang on a minute, there's got to be another way. And really that demonstrates what happened there. So I think you're right. I would go back to what you said earlier, put yourself in uncomfortable situations and force yourself to be in a situation that you would never normally be in. I'll give an example that I think might be relevant to few, and this might be interesting for you as well. You might not know this, but I had a fear of flying most of my life, and I couldn't imagine getting on a plane going a few hours, let alone where we are in Australia to get to the other side of the world is so far. So to force that, I created an opportunity with the Danish University to go and speak in one of their cohorts. Now, that was an opportunity I committed to before even acknowledging that I had to figure out how to get over the fear of flying. So that uncomfortable situation with your career, passionate about your career and your career growth, forced me in that situation. So I just thought that was relevant because it's such a tangible one. A lot of people have fear of flying. And I think your one is a really good example of pushing the boundaries and sometimes challenging. And as PMs, we have to challenge subject matter experts and we have to challenge those in power and sponsors to say sometimes they might not have all the answers. So I think it's a really good example of that. I don't know if you wanted to add any more.
Yeah, and yeah, that's about it. And there are just so many other stories where that positive energy, because generally when the doctors are planning for surgery, they don't invite the patient. And so I was invited into those rooms. And then I realized that the doctors, they have a PMO even without realizing it.
Okay, explain that.
Yeah, so for example, for the plastic surgery, right? They would know which doctor. I mean, there was one for orthopedic, and then there was one for the plastic surgery, right? The skin graft and all of that, right? So, like sometimes when I meet with the doctor for orthopedics, he would be telling me like, okay, at this time you're supposed to meet, for example, Fatima, and she's in charge of the skin graft. She's now in Brazil. She will be back at a certain time, you know. So in terms of the schedule and the program, it seems to me that they have some kind of center of excellence inside the hospital, that the knowledge is shared, and so they work in unison. It's like there's like a service provider, like a center of innovation inside. That the doctor for the orthopedics, he was able to share some information about the other doctor who would be taking over, you know? And like in terms of like, I wouldn't say like templates, but in terms of like tools that they would use, they have, systems that they use, what is required, the medication that is required, where you can get that. And in terms of cost, they were able, because at that time, things happen, and I had to add financial constraints too, because it's not so inexpensive to do these kind of things, and they were able to guide me inside the hospital in terms of the costing on some matters. And then even though the situation was challenging, at no point in time they were ever like insecure, or they weren't optimistic about a positive result. They had ideas after ideas. I mean, benefits realization, they were able to even do some benefits realization too, because at one point in time, I got this dream job while I was inside the hospital, because I lost my job while I was there. And the job came to me like 3 times while I was inside the hospital. And then when they came back to me the fourth time, there was no way I could have said no because I wanted the money, and I needed to get back into the industry to do other matters because I have obligations and responsibilities. And they were able to guide me and help me and worked with the company too, the HR department, to get me up to a level to go back. So when I started that new job, with a fiberglass cast on my arm. And it was because of the PMO, they knew that it is better to go with the fiberglass cast because I would be working in the job and some shifting and whatever, and maybe it would take some time. Maybe I would be traveling or something like this, and it would take some time. So that would be the best choice for me at the time, in terms of the letters, the structure of the letter to send to the company, assuring them that I would be in a good condition and stuff like this, so they had a PMO even without knowing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it goes back to what you said earlier. Like, this is where, although we might not use the labels of project manager and project management and PMO and all of that stuff, the similarities of some of these skills and capabilities within these operational teams, if you like, many of them, most of us, I don't think there's a person out in the world that doesn't do projects, whether it's planning a birthday party or getting married or filling out a passport application. All these little things are effectively projects. So this is a really good example. I think that again goes back to we're all doing projects. I wanted to talk about your experience across the 19 different Caribbean islands. You've done work across all of them, and I'm interested to know what different perspectives or focus points, or what is the similarities across the different, some more maturity, lower maturity, like, is there any insights you can share?
Yes, 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 yes. And this is a great question, Fatima. So the Caribbean, I would say it's like a melting pot, right? So I give you an example. So you have Jamaica, right? The Cayman Islands is like 45 minutes away from Jamaica. And we need a visa to go to the Cayman Islands. Jamaica is an independent state, but the Cayman Island is still under the British. In Jamaica, we spend our own Jamaican dollars, but in the Cayman Islands, it's a Cayman dollar, which values more than the US dollar.
Okay.
And in Jamaica, you have 3 million people. In the Cayman Islands, maybe you have like 60,000, and it's just one flat land. In Jamaica, it takes 45 minutes from one end of Jamaica to the other end of the country.
Oh, wow.
So if we have a regional project and say there's a project in the Cayman Islands, the first challenge is the laws of the land. Because even though Cayman Islands is like 45 minutes away, that logistics to get to the Cayman Island to do the job, it's totally different. Their laws, everything is just different. Their culture, everything is different. So as I said before, again, it goes back to the reasoning with Mark and being called the reasoner, because I realize that this is the way to go. It doesn't matter how many tools you have, how many methodologies you have. If you're not able to get the buy-in from the people or the stakeholders or the clients, then you will get nothing done.
Yep.
That's when I realized that I had to integrate the ambidextrous DNA inside of everything. So say, for example, you want to be structured, but at the same time, you need to be flexible. How are you going to balance that? So there has to be a little finesse. You understand? Give a little here and a little over here to make it work, And so this is how it works on the island. So you have the French, like Martinique is a French territory. It's the Caribbean, but it falls under it's still a European country. The laws there, the Cayman Islands, you have the ABC Islands, which is the Dutch. Their laws fall under the Dutch. But it's a Caribbean island, pretty beaches, you hear the music, so it's difficult. So being here, it just gives you that gratitude, and so I think this also helps me on the journey. And even to be here today, Fatima, you're in Australia.
Yeah.
How did we connect to be here? It's because of all of this that was happening and leading up to this.
Yeah, 100%. I like that example. People often misunderstand the complexity of cross-border, cross-region, cross-island complexities. Working in a global setting, whether that's global in terms of across the 19 islands and all of them having different taxes, different laws, different financials, different, all of that sort of stuff, is so challenging, because not only do you have to figure out, depending on whether you're running a project across all of them or you're just doing different projects that are unrelated. But let's say you're doing a project or a program to benefit the whole Caribbean and you're involving all these different areas, similar to when I was doing something in Asia Pacific. It's to benefit a lot of Asia Pacific countries, but they're all different. They all have their own maturity and complexity. And so I think understanding the nuances within those areas is so important. And that's why like the listening and understanding, and then to your point around the ambidextrous, seeing both sides is so important. Because imagine you went into the Cayman Islands and said to them, all right, we're going to do things like this, and we're going to use this, and and you just disregard all their laws. Like, they'll probably tell you to get stuffed. So people, I think, who have that skill set are so much better for it than I think those of us that maybe, spend all our time very insulated in one place for too long. I personally find it more valuable.
Yes. Yeah. And so these islands, and this is, and on top of that, our culture here is a little bit more relaxed.
100%. I would imagine that.
So just for example, the PM BOC will never tell you how to manage or to lead people in a relaxed culture. How do you do that? So give you an example. If you go into a country, say Martinique, that has a lot of holidays, you realize that sometimes you will have to beforehand, like you're making the project plan or you're having some brainstorming session, you have to mention a couple of their key holidays to show that you appreciate first.
Yes.
Then you listen. You hear what they have to say. You tell them, oh, this is a challenging milestone, but I know, and you listen and just to see what they will say. And you'll be surprised a lot of times they will come on board, even though that holiday is so special to them, because they that appreciation of their culture.
100%. Yeah. It's the respect for the cultural differences. Just like when we're visiting for a holiday, going to any particular country, you need to understand the basics of their laws and their visa requirements and all. It's the same with projects. Exactly the same with projects. I want to talk about community. So I know that you are prolific in your community involvement, not only locally in Jamaica, but I mean globally. I mean, you have your fingers in the PMO leader, which I was I'm a partner in with Joe from the US. You have been heavily involved in PMO Global Alliance, which has now been acquired by PMI. You're heavily now involved in the PMI world. You're doing all of this, plus you're doing all the other stuff that you're doing as part of your day job. So I want to know, how are you staying organized to be involved in all of these different communities, and what are the things that you get from being part of so many communities?
Okay. So again, the first thing, I am also grateful to have reached a certain place in my self-actualization. I think self-actualization is very important because it gets you a little bit closer to your inner self. What are you about? Can you be like everybody else, or can you be like you? I mean, how can you improve? The different ways how you could improve. How you prioritize those things. So for example, in terms of professional development, some persons are comfortable in the classroom while some persons are comfortable in the community. You understand? Because I am a reasoner, so I meet people, I learn from people, people learn from me. We build connections for a lifetime, which is very, very important.
Yes.
And
100%.
even that's why I'm here again. I'm in
Mhm.
Australia today, and I'm in Jamaica, you know. So that's that I would say the first thing is just for me, I was just fortunate enough to get a little bit closer to myself because of my experiences, and that ambidextrous mindset again, looking at life from two. So yes, I am in Jamaica, but it doesn't mean that I have to always think like a Jamaican,
Yes. Yep.
you know. So that, and so because I understand my voice and because I understand myself, so it is easy to interact and it's easy to share the message. So, say, for example, if I have to write a newsletter um, about something, I know that I'm about ambidexterity, the mindset, So I watch a football game, the Copa America. I wrote a newsletter. I give you an example. I wrote a newsletter about the Copa America and the UEFA that I think Spain won with the 16-year-old Yami Yamal and Messi again. And the guys, Messi was taken off the field, and this time his team carried him. So I
Yeah.
wrote about the ambidextrous leadership.
Yes.
This was easy for me because that's me.
Mm-hmm.
That's me, that's really me. So to write this, it was easy for me because that's me. I'm a
Yep.
sports fanatic. When
Mm-hmm.
I learned so much from sports as well, and even some of the other opportunities I would say that comes up, it's because of the network and you meet people, and because of your voice, you have conversations and the opportunities they will present themselves, and you collaborate. And so, because you're collaborating with people, it makes everything easy because you're not, it looks like you're doing everything by yourself,
Yep.
but that's not the case.
Yeah.
You're not really doing everything by yourself.
And so, one other example I wanted to bring up where you've been involved again, it appears in a volunteering capacity, is your project mentor position in the Richard Branson Center of Entrepreneurship. How did you find that opportunity? Like, because you're finding these opportunities, but I'm assuming because you're going out and seeking them, they're not just landing in your lap. So, how can someone listening who wants to be more involved in these sorts of things find opportunities? And how did you come across that one?
Okay, this one, how did I come across this one? Because this one was from, I believe, the COVID. So, yeah, so I believe for the Branson, I got an email because of the, however, I influence someone on the LinkedIn, and the newsletter, I got an email. And so when I got the email, the next move is to read and to see what this is about and how you can impact. So again, as I said, because I am close, because I know my voice and know what is it that I'm about, once I read, I will know if I can make an impact or not,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Mm-hmm.
the conversation starts. And that's how I really got involved, because for that, the Branson Center of Entrepreneurship is about entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs. And so most economies, they are driven by entrepreneurs,
Yeah. Yep. 100%. Mm-hmm.
you know. And so if they are driven by entrepreneurs, what I've observed is that you will hear a lot of times entrepreneurs talking about pivoting or scaling.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when you have further conversation, you will see that they're talking about the business plan and they're talking about the business models, but there's no integration of the project PMO, project management piece to the puzzle to get the outcomes that they want,
Yes.
to connect
Yep.
that to that strategy, you know?
Yes.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I always laugh and say, okay, let me see what is going to happen. Now you hear pivot, we need to scale, we need to scale. But when it comes down to that linchpin, that piece, it is missing. And so I say, okay, I think I could add some value here, not as a general business manager or a business mentor or whatever, but I am about project management,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I've seen from the Branson Center of Entrepreneurship, I've seen opportunities where we're changing the mindset of entrepreneurs, like getting them trained, for
Mm-hmm.
example, in like say agile courses, or coaching, project management coaching, but in the sense of being on the job and seeing what they're doing, and helping them with project management. That kind of opportunity arise because of that kind of involvement. So if you're not involved and you're not exposed, sometimes how do you expect persons in the community who are unaware to know about the impact, you
Yep.
know?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is one of the benefits of being involved as well, because there are a lot of persons who they don't know where to go. They don't even know that, okay, you have PMI or you have so it's persons like us, like change agents, who will get the message out there. And these small wins, well, I mean, some persons will say they are big wins, but these small wins are helping us all within the community.
100%. And like you said, Jamaica as an example is not a very big population for the country. And then by having those relationships that you do with communities across the world, PMO Global Alliance now is, US based. And then you've got obviously PMO Leader, and that's global, and all these different communities. I think you're right. You're bringing in the insights. So then you're not being insular and only focusing on, like the Jamaican way of doing project management. You're actually getting insights and picking what works. And again, going back to that ambidextrous and thinking about things that are not just black and white. So I think that's really great. And I think a lot of people could take insight from looking at your background, the amount of work that you do in the community. And mind you, I would say a lot of these roles, at least I know for the PMO Leader, it's all voluntary. So I think giving back is something that's a big part of what you do. And I just want to commend you for that. I just want to circle back to PMI and PMO Global Alliance. So I had a sneaky look at your profile, and I noticed that you were part of the pilot testing group for the new PMO certification. My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is the PMO Global Alliance's PMO CP, which is the certified practitioner, has now obviously been adopted into PMI and is being refreshed. Is that correct, first of all? Okay, amazing. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah. At the moment, I might not be at liberty to say too much, as you know, I mean, it's a pilot and so forth. But yes, definitely, of course, that's where it is going. And then based on my conversation with persons from the community as well, and what they have in mind, they are looking forward to some kind of, for example, the PMP, you have like a PM BOK or something like this.
Mm-hmm.
They are looking forward to some kind of guide, um, you know, based on what are the expectations to run a successful PMO. And so, in a sense, that partnership and collaboration, they're expecting something along that line as well, that it will be about bringing benefits to them in that sense of, how do you deliver a successful PMO post-COVID, or how do you deliver a successful PMO in this day and age, and as we've said before, so far we think it's something customer centric. You know, I mean, it's about perception of value. It's about the return on investment. You know, it's about the benefits realization. It's about stakeholder orientation, you know, that kind of thing. So no one size fit all, or, you know, bringing in something pre-established into an organization without listening to the key decision makers and connecting what you're doing with strategy, you know, that kind of thing, you know. So yeah, but I may not right now be at liberty to say, you know, too much.
Of course.
Maybe another time, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
No, that sounds good. I'm hoping Americo is going to be on the show at some point. He and I have been tag teaming back and forth for a while. So hopefully when it's launched formally or released, we'll hear a little bit more about it. So I'm staying tuned, but it's great to see again you being participating in that is, I think, of really good value. I wanted to just shine a light on something we don't talk about enough, and that is challenges or failures in projects. We talk a lot today about all the positives and all the wins and all the amazing things, but you know, I think it's fair to say we have a lot of failures in projects, either projects we failed in or projects we've seen failed. Can you share an example of either a project you've seen fail, whether it's involved you or not, that you can share some lessons from?
Yeah, I believe this is this is a thought-provoking question, Fatima. I believe in all my projects we've failed. You know, maybe the failures are not visible to the people who can take action against a particular team member or the teams, you know, but we've all failed, you know. But I believe how you fail fast or how you bounce back from a failure will determine the character of a team member or the team, and what kind of results we get. So I will, let me see, I will give you an example of a project. So can this, okay, so this same situation in the hospital, right? So I went to Curacao. I was working on a project in Curacao, and I was on site with the client. We were on the same page. We were delivering according to our agreements and so forth. But then the project went into a different direction, and it went into a different direction not because of the client, but it went into a different direction because of the key stakeholders on our end. So there were things internally that were politically affiliated, which is above my pay grade, you know, and I was just doing the project out of passion, you know, just to deliver on the customer premise, you know, and based on what I thought we wanted to do. You know, I came from one department, but there was a different PMO department, you know, so the department that I was from was more of like a service delivery department. And then you had the PMO, but the service delivery department and the PMO, politically, they weren't aligned on some matters. And so we started to have some communication issues. And so what happened, I became the scapegoat and got removed from the project and was blamed and was shamed and was relocated.
It's terrible.
And so this is how complexity works as well, Fatima. You know, before you had this concept VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, right? And then you probably use that to determine if a project is complex, you know. But sometimes many things can determine how a project become complex. The project could be going very good, and because of lack of communication above, and it becomes complex. And until that is resolved, Maybe for you as a project manager, it's above your pay grade. But until that is resolved, then the project will always be complex. So then again, as I said, it's about, listening and having conversations and having that open mindset, because when you have that open mindset, it makes it's easier for you to bounce back and not dwell in the past. And so from that experience, I was shattered. My ego was shattered. A lot of things was shattered. But because of the open mindset, it allowed me to have the right conversations with the right people, have some harsh conversations too. I believed in myself with that open mindset. I was relocated, and then I never had an issue like that before. After that,
it's unfortunate that you had to go through that, and it is unfortunate that it's very common that those sorts of things happen, particularly in large corporates where, they often got to find that scapegoat. And truthfully, as a consultant, I'm sure you probably can agree, as a consultant, usually the consultants are brought in so that the internal staff have got someone to blame when things don't go well, even if it's, they're steering the ship, so to speak. So we probably feel that and see that. But it's really good that you are building and have built since then that resilience muscle so that you can overcome these challenges. And I think it's a good story to share for those that are aspiring that, we will get knocked down. We will get, kicked to the ground. We will have our egos hurt. We will sometimes have to reflect and say, is it us? Have we genuinely contributed to this lesson, to this failure, and what lesson can we take? Because sometimes we are partially to blame, but then other times there's absolutely no wrongdoing on our part, but we just get dealt with that. So thanks for sharing. I think that's a good one to share for those listening. Now we're almost out of time today. My last question for you is if there is anything else you'd like to share with our listeners, a call to action, a piece of advice, or a question to ponder.
yes, I would definitely say to my audience, my community, and all the listeners out there, I know, we have a long list of, skills for project managers to become successful. But to that list, I want to highlight and advocate for the power of resilience and the power of also embracing your dualities. And by that, I mean, there are some skills that you use at home that you don't use at work. And you'd be so surprised how, if you integrate some of those skills into what you're doing, as again, embracing dualities, you'd be surprised to see the reaction and the results that you get, you know? So just don't be afraid to become ambidextrous, just look at things from different, a lot of times we want structure, but at the same time, we need to have flexibility, you know? We need to drive innovation, but at the same time, we have a lot of volatility, So how do we do that, So it's just to develop that kind of aptitude to find that finesse in the middle, So that's, and you can only do that through the power of resilience and just embracing your dualities. So whatever that is, if you're good at having conversations, I realized that I was very good at having conversations, so I embraced that. Maybe there's something you're good at cooking, and it does something on the job. Maybe persons like to go out with you for lunch, and you build relationships through that. So yeah, that is pretty much something I would share with the community today. Just feel free to embrace your duality and that power of resilience, And resilience, I would say, it's a very important skill, because just the same way everything is a project, in life we all go through challenges, And if you're not resilient, you will be left behind.
Very well said. And on that note, thank you so much, Mark, for your time. I look forward to our continued collaborations in all the other things that you're doing, including the PMO leader. I'll make sure I link to your book in our notes, and also connect for people to connect with you. Where would be the best place? Do you want them to go to a website, LinkedIn? What's your preference?
Yes, LinkedIn. And I also have a newsletter called the Ambidextrous Mindset,
Perfect.
where I share a message about everything. So, for example, this podcast, when it's out, I will have an episode in the Ambidextrous Mindset summarizing what we discussed.
Amazing. I'll make sure I share both of those in the show notes as well. Other than that, have a great rest of your day, and thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Fatima. Same to you.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Please share this with someone or rate it if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to follow us on social media, and to stay up to date with all things Agile ideas, go to our website www.agilemanagementoffice.com. I hope you've been able to learn, feel, or be inspired today. Until next time, what's your Agile idea?